Good morning, everybody. My name is Alexander Gize, and I'm moderating this roundtable today for you. I'm a founder of International Education Club, and I do have several guests here for you. I promise that we will be together not more than 1 hour and 20 minutes, maybe a little bit less, but not more. This is maximum. And our topic for today is what makes a contemporary teacher of English. So I'm going to do 3 rounds of talks with our speakers, discussion, questions and answers. You are very welcome to ask questions via chat. I will read them to our guests. So, and before to start, I would like to tell you my little story, my short story, the story about my first teacher of English. I went to very typical Soviet school. Kids began studying English at the fourth grade. Our class was divided into two groups. One group went to German and another to English. I was supposed to go to English. And on the day of the first lesson, I missed it. I missed it because I didn't manage to find the right classroom. That was very serious misconduct for the pupil of the fourth grade. Then the English teacher said that she didn't want me in her class. She did not believe that I just was lost at school. So that was the moment when my future could change. It was very hard to assure the teacher to keep me in the class. Finally, I am the only person from my class who became an English interpreter. So, let's talk today about the contemporary teacher. What is he or she? Let's paint the portrait from different points of view, qualifications, professional competence, personal qualities, problems and concerns, etc. So, and from the beginning, my first round of talks, I would request to our speakers is to describe an ideal portrait of the contemporary teacher and tell us what is the most critical here from their point of view. And I would like to give the floor to Ron Murray, co-founder, Director of Studies, Language Learning Center Europe. Please, Ron, go ahead. Hello, Ron, do you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead. You are
Okay,
on.
I'm going to share screens, okay?
Yeah,
And
great.
uh, okay, let me get that up there, that picture. Okay. Well, you asked the question, what is a contemporary teacher? But what I did, and everybody who knows me knows I love to do mind maps, and I just sort of mind mapped it, okay? Just to give, just one quick overview. But when you look at the question, what is a contemporary teacher? We have to look at then and we have to look at now. And then I think is very important because there's this transition phase. Then we see the past, okay, what we expected out of teachers, what were teachers doing in the classroom, and we can see that teachers used books, they used tests to guide the learning. They were very accustomed, of course, to face-to-face, learning. And of course, because they were using tests and books, they were very instructivist in the way they were doing things. And then there was also the thing that politics does shape the way education works in countries. So teachers do need to be aware of how politics works. Just in schools and in politics in general in a country, because the Ministry of Education does form, of course, what we as teachers do in the classroom. Now, I have to say that I live in Germany, and work in the German speaking world. So what I would be, talking about here is, maybe the German perspective, and there could be some cultural differences as well. But to answer the question, who is a contemporary teacher? I have to say that the most important thing is that teachers need to be open to lifelong learning. They need to be open to that idea because, especially teachers who are very, instructivist in nature, teacher centered, that sometimes, is a problem for them. But another thing that we have, to answer the question, what is a contemporary teacher? Teachers today need to be, we used to have the problem just getting teachers to be technology friendly. And we accepted that if they used some technology in the classroom, but that's not the case anymore. And the COVID situation has exposed that, and teachers feel exposed. They feel very vulnerable to what is going on because they weren't prepared for that. Because now we're asking them to be technology savvy, and that's a big jump for a lot of teachers. And another thing is that teachers need to move, if we're talking about online learning, that they need to move from that instructivist way of doing things to constructivist ways of doing things. And that is a big change for teachers because constructivist teacher orientated, or constructivist orientated teachers are learner centered, and they believe that students should create. And that's totally different than, the teacher being the center of everything. And that starts with that very simple thing that teachers need to start learning the difference between an activity and a task. And they sometimes mix those two things up. And you'll see that under that, all those arrows lead to instructional coach. And I'll finish off with that. But, we look at the left side of this mind map. Teachers today need to know what a flipped classroom is. And in today's world, that if you're doing, online learning, that it is about the flipped classroom. And when you're doing the flipped classroom, you're combining ideas of blended learning. And, there's always that controversy of what is blended learning. Well, the COVID situation has exposed and defined what blended learning is. Uh, and if you're doing the flipped classroom, then you definitely, and you're, constructivist in the ways you're doing things, then you're definitely leading your learners to be self-directed. And many teachers do have that problem. So again, back to the question, what is a contemporary teacher? Contemporary teachers should lead their students to be self-directed. They should integrate skills-oriented learning into what they're doing. And it's not just as simple as 21st century skills. We need to move to other things as well too, what we call deeper learning. And of course, in the past, teachers were just happy to, we were happy as directors of schools, of programs, just to get teachers to understand what learning to learn was, okay? But that's changed. And now we have to integrate learning to learn in another way, and not just methodologies, but also what really is online learning. We also need to get teachers to understand assessment if they're going to be doing online learning. And teachers really need to get in touch with assessment and the differences of assessment, formative assessment, summative assessment. And I separate this here because it is the elephant in the room, and that is e-assessment and how that is done. I train over 500 teachers a year at the university that I work at. And I've been in this business for over 30 years. And I have to say that this was a problem that our university was confronted with. And for me, it wasn't, the COVID situation didn't scare me because I've been teaching since 2007 online. So we were ready for this, and we were ready for e-assessment. And then the last thing, and probably that one most important thing that, answering the question, what or who is a contemporary teacher? The key word to all of this is optimization, optimizing that online learning experience. This is extremely important. And all of it, of course, is about everything that you see here on this mind map. That how we flip that classroom and understand those methodologies, that this will lead to optimization. And I also want to end by saying that companies, corporations, organizations, ministries of education, this is a serious problem for them because they need to learn, and they are learning very quickly, is that getting teachers to understand that that time you spend with students online means optimization. This will be the guiding force in tomorrow's world of online learning. Companies are sprouting up everywhere to and are building their ideas and methodologies on the one word of optimization. All of that leads to the thing here, but I believe teachers need to be methodology savvy and start integrating all the PBLs, and there's many different kinds of PBL and TBL, but all of that should lead to deeper learning, because if you're doing the flipped classroom, you are doing deeper learning. And the last thing is, who do we go to? How do we do it? I believe that schools need to integrate instructional coaches into, to help teachers to make that move. And that we need to start finding those people in our schools. They're there. And directors of schools, principals of schools, owners of schools, and ministries of education need to create this as a job. It's not new. It's been going on for years and years, and online learning is not new. It's been there for over 30 years. And the schools in North America have already integrated instructional coaches. Teachers in many countries, especially the United States, I'm an American, and I know that I'm living in Germany. Many of my colleagues accuse me of Americanizing German schools. That's not true. It's just making sure that our teachers are ready for the classrooms of tomorrow, online learning, and that means finding those people who are instructional coaches to help our colleagues make that move to the world of tomorrow. That's what
Ron,
I have
thank
to
you very
say.
much. Sorry for interrupting you, but I think that you are trying to tell us everything, but I think you have started to answering my further questions. So that's
I'm
why
going to stop sharing
I'm
screen.
interrupting you, and I think that you will have a chance to continue your speech a little bit later. And now I would like to give the floor to our next speaker, Tom Kittle, Education Director, Norwich Institute for Language, UK. Please, Tom, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thanks to everyone for organising this event. As Alex says, I'm director of NILE, the Norwich Institute for Language Education, coming you today from a bit of a sunny but chilly east of England morning. I'm very pleased to be here with you. So Alex has asked us to think about what makes a contemporary teacher. I've been thinking about this, talking about this for the last couple of years, presenting on key teacher competencies for the 2020s. And obviously, this has all been thrown into stark relief and actually revision and rethinking by the events of this particular unprecedented year. But I want to centre on what I think are 5 key language teacher competencies for the 2020s. They're not all embedded within teachers yet, but I think they're valid developmental aims for teachers as we move forward. The first one of these is language awareness. It may seem very simple that language teachers should have language awareness, but we need to move further forward in understanding what language really is, because we've got a threat coming. We've got the threat of speech recognition, of translation engines, of artificial intelligence. And so as language teachers, we need to move beyond this and understand that language is a choice. The use of language is a series of choices that the speaker or the writer makes, and the interpretation of those choices is what makes language comprehension. So the fact is that we know that computers and technology can parse sentences, can understand what's a verb, what's a noun, can translate and cross-translate. But what they can't do is to make those choices for learners. They can't reflect the individual choices, the individual idiolect, how we want to sound as a language, the sociolect, how we want to belong to a particular group. So teachers have to understand that language is not a series of grammar formulas to put into place in a particular context, but choices that we make. Whether we choose the first conditional or the second conditional is a choice that we're making about how we want to be interpreted. So language teachers have to be language aware, and that goes beyond parsing sentences and into seeing language use as choice. The second thing, and it's nice that there's already overlap with Ron, I totally concur with the idea of teacher assessment literacy. Again, we've got this threat coming down the road of more and more automated marking of spoken English, automated marking of written English. Teachers need to understand what's going on under the bonnet of assessment tasks. They need to be able to interpret assessment tasks as learning tasks. They need to remove the fear of the traditional assessment tasks and see them as what they're actually trying to address in a learner's competence. And that will undeniably mean addressing this in the new world of e-assessment, online assessment, looking at how language is different when it's delivered online, but what the fundamental principles are of what we mean by language competencies. And there are frameworks out there. The Common European Framework of Reference is incredibly robust and has been added to in 2018 with the companion volume. There's lots of reference to what language online will mean, but teachers need to be empowered to make these decisions within their classroom settings so that assessment is not seen as this thing that's done to learners, but it's the thing that's done with learners. And I think Ron and I very much agree on this. The third competence that I think is emerging and has perhaps been undervalued and under-researched is what I call environmental awareness. And I'm not talking about the great work that some people in our industry are doing about the wider environment and how we can respond to those things that are threatening the planet. I'm talking about awareness of the learning environment. What differences it actually makes to a learner to have the appropriate levels of lighting, the appropriate levels of oxygen, the appropriate sound levels, the appropriate temperature levels in their learning setting. This is very true in the classroom, and there's some amazing work being done on the optimum learning temperature and light levels and balance of reduction of CO2 levels in a physical classroom. But we all know that the last year has thrown us into this online world, and they're just as important there. Getting learners who are learning online to stay hydrated, to take pauses, to look away from the screen every 20 minutes, to take this awareness that they are in a learning setting and they need to take care of themselves in that learning setting. And the teacher needs to be aware of those challenges to focus and concentration and what we can actually do as part of our learning tasks. That the learning online doesn't become something that we assume that people can sit in a Zoom room for 6 hours and still get optimal learning out of that. So language awareness, assessment literacy, awareness of the learning environment, and of course, as Ron has already said, the elephant in the room, digital literacy. Teachers need to be able to flex with this. They need to be able to move between blended learning settings, fully online settings, hybrid learning settings. We've just published a research report this morning on how hybrid learning is affecting 150 different teaching organizations across 30 countries. What does it mean when we've got learners socially distanced in a physical classroom and at the same time working with learners who are beaming in remotely and online? But that's just a small part of it. We need to be digitally literate in knowing what we can do as a teacher. There's no barriers anymore to a teacher having their own virtual classroom space, like this one we're in today. There's no barrier to a teacher setting up their own asynchronous platform, a tool like Edmodo, and having asynchronous content for learners to learn if that's not provided by their institution. There's not even a barrier to teachers having packages of test preparation materials or online practice activities to do things outside the classroom setting, which traditionally might have been done in a homework book. You know, when I was at school, it was a little blue book and you filled it in and the teacher may have looked at it now and again. Nowadays, that can be collaborative, it can be multimodal, it can be really rich as a learning experience. And that obviously ties in with what Ron has been saying about the flipped classroom, what we do outside the synchronous space when we have the learner's attention and focus in the classroom. So that's the fourth. And the fifth one, I think we really have to be aware as language teachers of the integration between content and language learning. Of course, we've known about the moves in CLIL for the last 25 years, but I think it's becoming ever more prevalent that the boundaries are blurring between general English and English for specific purposes and mediation skills and doing things with our language and learning as using content as a vehicle, certainly in the project-based learning side, but also how we integrate language and English language and German as a second language and French as a second language and Russian as an additional language, how we integrate that into content-based subjects. One of my colleagues here says, if you want to teach English, teach something else. Yeah? Content is now a vehicle for language learning, not just a generated set of content so we can focus on grammar and tenses and a bit of vocabulary. It needs to be integrated, and that's a teacher competence that we need to develop over the coming decade. I think to be really aware of what the changes are coming, those are 5 competencies that I would suggest are crucial for language teachers to be aware of. So there's my 5 key competencies, very personal ones, and I think that people could add to those or take away from those depending on their own context, but I think those are crucial areas that we should work on in the coming decade. And I think just to add on one more thing, I know you're going to come back to it, Alex, we need to remember that we're all on a journey. Teacher development is a journey and will feel differently at different times. Sometimes we feel like giving up. Sometimes we feel like our institution won't give us that chance to start or won't give us the support to get across that bridge. Sometimes we've had great successes. And this year has been a testament to the adaptability and the creativity and the innovation of teachers. But the most important figure in this one is the one on the far side of the bridge. This little guy over here, I've colored him in red. He's not saying to his friends, look at these guys, they've done it, you should be like them. He's saying, hey guys, over there, there's another bridge. And we get to the end of one bridge and there's another one. And this year has thrown that into very stark reality. We're all on a learning journey and we need to be collaborative and supportive, and events like this are very much a part of that. So back to you, Alex. Thank you very much and look forward to discussing this further.
I just want to jump in there and say that's that instructional coach that I was talking about. That red man you have on that chart. That's the one we need. That's the hero.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Tom. And absolutely agree that there is another bridge, and unfortunately, not everybody can find the other bridge, but nevertheless. Okay, let's move on, and I would like to connect to our discussion. Our next speaker, who is Yelena Domaradskaya, Study Skills Lecturer, David Gain College, and Head of Student and Academic Support at Chiswick College, UK. Please, Yelena, the microphone is yours.
Right, thank you very much, Alex. A small correction, it's just Head of Student and Academic Support at Chiswick College. David Game is already in the past, but that's not a problem at all. Greetings from sunny London, everyone, which is, of course, the capital of Great Britain, as we all know too well. Lots of thanks to Ron and Tom, who have pretty much covered everything I could have thought of. So it's going to be a very short edition. Yeah, thanks, Ron, in particular, for reminding me of my 7 years at an American university in London. We did have blended learning in 2007, and we absolutely hated it. Who could have thought? You know. So, but just to give you a bit of a background to yours truly, I was born and bred in St. Petersburg, Russia, and it so happened that for the last 20 years I've been living and working in the UK. So that puts me in a perfect position to kind of compare the two systems. And talking about this image of an ESL teacher in the UK, on top of everything that's already been mentioned, just wanted to add one big thing which struck me when I first moved here, and it continues to surprise me, well, in a positive way. I believe that in order to be a very good ESL teacher, you need to have a high level of cultural awareness, a high level of tolerance towards other cultures, and a high level of openness towards other cultures, to the level of being a diplomat who reconciles these sometimes opposing cultures in one classroom. And I know we've moved to digital classrooms now, but even there, it's still valid, because, you know, teaching in London, people from all over the world come to the UK to learn English, unsurprisingly. And sometimes you get, very striking differences between your students. And it's the way they think, the way they talk, the way they dress, the way they communicate with each other, with the members of the opposite sex, the way they expect you to teach them, it's all very different. And not only you have to think of every step you make in order not to offend anyone in your classroom, you have to be aware of the cultures who are united in your classroom, but also you sometimes act as an advocate, sort of reconciling these cultural differences in your class. Also, we did have that even prior COVID, what we lovingly refer to as edutainment. Ron did mention, and I think Tom also sort of echoed that now we all have to find different methods of teaching, different platforms, different ways of integrating the learner and making it more and more learner-centered. But even before that, good teachers, as opposed to those who were very teacher-centered, would find ways of providing edutainment in their classrooms, sort of education blended with entertainment. And that makes students forget that they're actually doing hard work, they're learning a language, they feel like they're being entertained. Well, I'd like to pass it back to Alex, because I'm aware that time is short and we need to do 2 more rounds of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Yelena. Thank you very much. And we've got one more speaker for you, and I would like to invite Evgeny Lichkin, English teacher at School 1570 in Moscow, the winner of iTeacher 2019. And Evgeny, please, you're very welcome to share your portrait of ideal teacher.
Thank you, Alex, and I would like to thank all the speakers for drawing this portrait of a contemporary teacher. And I think I just have no no other comments to this, because this portrait is very vivid and fully detailed. I think I'm more like in a position of summarizing of all the key principles that have been said right now. And first of all, I'd like to highlight that when we speak about contemporary teacher, we speak about the global image of a teacher. And 10 years before, we could say that there is a global image and everyone shares these values. And we could say, but we have some ideas and some obstacles in our country that stop us from meeting these requirements. But nowadays, as other speakers have already said, the job of a teacher and the position of a teacher is becoming a global one. There are no boundaries and no limits in teaching today, and we can see that it's a crucial idea to meet the requirements that we are discussing right now. And we have been discussing that ideal teachers are those who have knowledge, skills, and competencies, plus personality, self-confidence, intelligence. They are people who are open-minded as well. The excellent teachers care about these students, have a good communicative tolerance, especially in our times when we speak that the AI technologies are on the rise, when online and automated assessments tools are using everywhere. We need to quote the famous words from the Tarkovsky Stalker film, that human needs human, especially in our extremely digitalized times. And I can say, just summarizing everything that was said just before me, English teacher is a person who is not only teaching, but he has to learn from his pupils to progress themselves. We speak that it's not a one-sided conversation. It's not one-sided way of interaction with your students. You always have to keep in mind their goals, their feelings, how do they response to the that you teach them. And it's always important to keep progressing your personal development in contact with your students. Also, perfect teacher, ideal teacher, does not need to save his students from not knowing. It's always a very popular role model when a teacher acts like a hero who will come and save everyone from not knowing the gerund forms or conditionals. So I will provide you with everything and you will be ready for all the situations in the world. As just Tom said, that it's very important for a teacher to be a facilitator who gives a chance to the students to enrich their knowledge, to make the responsible choice, in life and in using the English. At the end of the day, our goal is to make our students willing to learn by themselves and to make them the learners throughout their lives. Also, I think it's obvious, but I just would like to highlight this idea that contemporary English teachers should be global-centric, and an ideal teacher, or you cannot meet these requirements if you just focused on culture of your own country, or you just see the culture of other global Englishes, as it was mentioned in the previous meeting. When you're just focusing on the textbook that you are teaching, when you do not attract extra resources, and when you do not use authentic materials in your learning. So that's a very crucial point, in my opinion, because we see that situation is not always meets this requirement. Also, Ron had a very motivating talk on how teachers should use a wide range of teaching and learning styles and teaching technologies, and to provide equal opportunity for each and everyone to work comfortably during our lessons and during the process of education that we give to our students. So I would like to stress that teacher sees learning as a lifelong process, and it means that he tries to create the learning as a lifelong process, not only for his students, but for himself as well. English teacher is a global learner, and that means that his professional and language development never ends. So English teachers are in a constant process of developing their skills in trying to find new technologies, in trying to find new methods, in trying to enrich their vocabulary, and to be immersed in global culture. And I think that it's English teachers are always at the cutting edge of all pedagogical technologies, because we are connected with the global community of educators, of scientists, of methodologists who try to push these boundaries way beyond the way that we teach right now. And finishing my short talk, I would like to say that an ideal teacher should be happy, because when teachers are happy, their students are happy too. And we must not only concentrate on constantly developing ourselves professionally, or pushing our language skills further and further. We also need to find enough time to be happy, to do everything that we love. And that's when we have the connection to the bright side of the life, and our students definitely feel it and begin to feel in the same way. I think that's it.
Thank you, Evgeny. Thank you, everybody, for the portrait of ideal contemporary teacher. It seems to me that you just described like a Superman or Superwoman of the contemporary English teacher. I am not sure if such a person exists in the world, but probably my next question to you will clear it a little bit. So now I would like to move to the second round of our talks. I would like to ask everybody of our speakers probably to tell us about obstacles or problems they met in their work, the problems which interfere with the people to become contemporary teachers, become good contemporary teachers. So, and if you don't mind, I would like to start from Yelena Domorodska this time, and to give the floor to Yelena, please. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Alex. Right. So again, I'm going to speak from the UK perspective and through the eyes of somebody who was educated in Russia, so can see the difference. What I've noticed and what I continue to notice is that, of course, as we all know, training as an ESL teacher here in the UK is not a very challenging thing, because there's this qualification CELTA and another one called Delta. One lasts 4 weeks of full-time study, the other one is 4 months of full-time study, and of course that does get people who have done their degrees for 4 or 5 years at a pedagogical university pretty upset. So in a sense, English is a product that can be sold very successfully in the UK. The demand is huge. People from all over the world come here, and also a British ESL teacher is very welcome anywhere in the world, in any language school, just because they seem to be the ultimate bearer of that knowledge, being a native speaker. So the problem is that with this huge demand and the relative ease of qualifying as an ESL teacher, you get teachers and teachers. It's in a sense, it's perceived as a trade, like you're like a hairdresser or a carpenter. You can train really quickly, and it becomes quite hard to find really good teachers for all sorts of purposes, because I work in further and higher education, and lots of people are quite good at marketing themselves, and they manage to build quite good CVs, whereas their actual skills are not very good. So that is my main problem, that the choice is very big, and there are not that many good teachers who really are properly trained, who really are teachers by call, not by default, because lots of people think that because they speak English as a native language, why not teach it? So that's it from me. I suppose I'll just give a bit of time to others as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. And I would like to connect to this question. Tom Kittle, please, Tom, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, very interesting points from Elena. I guess I come from a perspective of the kind of teacher that Elena's describing, starting off with a CELTA and then moving on to a Delta and then moving on to a Master's. For me, I'll quote another very important figure in our industry, Hugh Deller, who said he fell into a me-shaped hole, and teacher for me was a calling, and I found that was the right thing for me to be doing, and it was both a love and a profession and a craft and an art and a science all at once. And so I think when you find your calling and know that this is what gives you satisfaction, it's very rewarding, and there are lots of options within the profession to go. I think the challenges for teachers are we're very time poor. We have a lot of work to do. There is always that pressure of other things we should be doing outside of our classroom hours, and it's easy to forget that when we call for professional development, we don't really say, well, when is this going to happen, and who's going to give me the time to do this, and who's going to support me to do this? We have the workload issues of everything else that's competing alongside that, and just trying to stay up with the administrative requirements and the changing requirements of your institution or your ministry or your new curriculum or your new implementation of technology is a massive call on teachers' workload. We have challenges of status, low pay in many contexts for teachers in state schools around the world, perhaps in many low social status of the teaching profession, which doesn't help to empower that thing which Eugene was talking about, teacher well-being and teacher feeling of happiness in their own profession as they look outside in society. And then there's access to resources. Where do I go to get this next step in my career if I want a certificate that proves to the rest of the world or proves to my future or current employers that I have this qualification? It costs money, and it very often it needs to be funded with a significant impact on a teacher's salary. You're very lucky if you're in a teaching institution that will fund your professional development in qualification terms rather than in service activity terms. I also think that teachers shouldn't be afraid of specializing. I get very nervous when I hear about a teacher, or particularly a teacher trainer, who says, yes, I can do very young learners, teachers who teach 3 to 6 year olds, and I can also teach English for academic purposes, and I can also work in this field and that field. I think teachers should be allowed to specialize and should feel confident that these are very different areas of our profession and they deserve the full attention. I would feel very, very reluctant to walk into a class of 3-year-olds or to walk into a teacher training environment with teachers of 3 or 4-year-olds, because I think that's a specialization that they deserve and I don't have, and I'm perfectly prepared to admit that. Back to you, Alex.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Evgeny if he would like to add something from the Russian point of view, from the how do you think, what kind of obstacles do we have here in Russia for people?
Thank you, Alex. As I said before, the image of an ideal teacher is always a global image. And when we speak about obstacles, we speak about local obstacles that stop us from meeting. I think that the main word that we can describe all the obstacles that we have in Russia is called isolation. I just would like to provide some ideas from my experience. What does it mean? First of all, it's like a teacher's isolation, because you know that we have a tendency to use limited resources in our work. I speak about the fragile list of the textbooks, in which teachers have to make a responsible choice. Again, this word, as you can see, a responsible choice out of the list, where we need to understand what resources should be used every day. And of course, it makes us to have the necessity to look for additional resources. And this necessity states the main problem. How to understand what resources should I use? How to understand what is the good resource and what is a bad resource? How to plan our work when we need to take one exercise from here, another listening task from there, and how to combine them. So, of course, we said that English teachers are always the creators and designers, but how to understand what skills do you need? How to make enough experience to make it fluently and make it positive for your students? That's a very serious question, in my opinion, and a lot of teachers in Russia trying to acquire this experience through processes. And I'm very glad that different educational communities of English teachers trying to share this experience with each other, and the situation is going up and forward in these terms. Also, I would like to say that visiting teachers development programs add almost nothing to the teaching practices, because we know that when we visit the teachers development, state teachers development programs, we speak about how to form your lesson according to the federal educational standard. We speak how to pass the exams, how to organize Russian national exams, but we practically do not touch upon the idea of language development. Because you know, there is a phrase that to save a drowning person is a responsibility of a drowning person, and it means that teachers' language and professional development is always given to the teachers respectively. And again, there is the question: how to understand what should you develop in yourself? What limits do you have, and how to understand them? Because sometimes we practically do not have enough time with so many hours and so many students in our group just to sit and reflect on our work. And I should say that we need to just continue working with this idea that it's okay to reflect on your work, that English teachers should always strive to be better, because the better the teacher knows new material, knows new methodologies and technologies, the better his students are. And the better he is the better he feels, or he or she feels, about the teaching in general. And also, I would like to say there's a lack of the ways to practice English, because we know that there are a lot of situations, especially in remote cities, where English teachers do not have a practice of communication with the English-speaking people, or do not have an opportunity to travel to English-speaking countries. Of course, it's a very big problem, and I can say with the help of different international communities, with the help of the communities that provide support to English teachers worldwide, we can solve this problem to take this obstacle out of the brackets. And of course, I would like to conclude this short speech about also students' limits and obstacles that our students meet. Of course, it's practically the same way, because our students do not have the opportunity to use the language outside of the classroom. Because we know that when we speak about Russian English lessons, we say that we can form the English environment, the language environment, most of the time only on our lessons. And when we step outside the classroom, we are stepping in a broad communicative context of Russian. And of course, when you live thousands of miles away from people who speak English as their mother tongue, you do not feel any urge to use it. When all the content that you're interested in is perfectly translated by professionals, you have the same task. There are no motivation practically, because you live in a big city. You live in a big city, and it's like a part of our legacy, you know. So I think that's the main obstacles in acquiring great English skills.
Thank you, Evgeny. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Ron if he would like to share some ideas about the obstacles and problems in Europe regarding the becoming the contemporary teachers, please.
I'd like to concentrate on the Russian perspective. And I have to say that I've been coming to Russia for quite some years now. What brought me to Russia was not actually why I'm in Russia now, and probably how I, am known in Russia with teachers. And I was asked to do a talk at a conference, and we're talking here about some of the obstacles. I was just a very active listener in a lot of the workshops that were taking place at some of the conferences. And one thing that I noticed was there was a question that wasn't being asked. It was just an assumption that, everybody had in the room, but it was a false assumption. And that false assumption is that we in the room all believed the same thing, which we don't, okay? We all come from different backgrounds, different educations. And I love the analogy that Elena brought up about a hairdresser. You can learn how to cut hair, and the only thing you need is a pair of scissors. And those are your instruments, and you can get on a plane, go anywhere today, and practice that trade, okay? You don't even need to speak the mother language of the people, because, you're giving them the service they want. You're cutting their hair, they feel beautiful. That's that emotional thing going on there. But, I am a trained teacher. I did go to a pedagogical college, okay? And I went on to study international business administration, worked for a huge company in London, traveled all over the world. I speak 5 languages. Those were just things that were assumed. I knew business and I knew how training and teaching worked, okay? There were, some assumptions, from the corporate level. This is why I asked the question to teachers to overcome some of these obstacles. We got to go down deep. We got to become metacognitive in how we approach these things. I asked teachers, what do you believe teaching is? What do you believe learning is? Get them to answer that question, because that is the basis and the beginning of their lifelong learning journey that they will have. Sometimes they have false assumptions of what teaching and learning is, or assumptions that are very cultural in nature, which will hinder them if they want to really become great teachers in today's international online world. It starts there. And the second question I asked, because I realized after doing that workshop that there had to be a follow-up workshop. And my Russian colleagues asked me to do it, and I put it together in about 4 hours so I could do it the next day. And they just let me do it at a conference because I asked the question, what is your superpower? What is it that you bring to the table? Think about it. What are those skills and competencies that you bring? And when you realize what those are, that's the fill in the gap time now. Because you see what's required of you, you might not have that. And that is also some of those problems. So we start with getting people to be metacognitive. reflect on, what they believe in teaching and learning should be. What is your superpower? And let's start filling in the gap and create some kind of bucket list for your CPD. Yeah, because that's going to be the thing. Tom brought up something that I think is very important when we talk about methodologies, and he brought about, that English is a tool, and that Quill, this methodology, where English is just a tool to teach other things. Well, that has to do with content development as well too, and how we use content. I believe that the teachers of tomorrow must take interdisciplinary approaches to what they're doing in that classroom. And they need to understand, this is why I work at a big university. We have almost 60,000 students. Our pedagogical university puts out 1,200 teachers a year. Okay, we're the top 10 in the German-speaking world. And I work there, and I demand a lot of my teachers, okay? We don't do Celta and Delta and Melta and all of that other stuff, okay? We give them master's degrees to be great teachers. I'm tough on them because I want my teachers to be great teachers, yeah? And one of the things that they also have to learn is technology, but Tom brought up something else. And that is, there is a difference between digital literacy and the digital divide. We get into things that much deeper in cultural understandings. Yes, we need teachers to be digital literate in what they're doing, but they run against a wall when they see that there's a digital divide. The students don't have the things that they need to learn, and that there's a conflict there. I have to say that I'm involved in a program right now, getting laptops to students, okay, so that they can get to the, to the class and be, that some fairness, is there. So we've got those things going on, and that's sort of a socioeconomic and political things that have to be overcome. Those are some more obstacles that, again, another elephant in the room. The room is filled with a lot of elephants, okay? But Tom also brought up something else, and that learning environment, and how you described it, Tom, I found very interesting. These things are regulated in German-speaking countries. How much light is in the room, how much natural air is in the room. These are heavily regulated things. I'm the owner of 3 schools, and we had to fulfill those requirements before we could even open our doors. So that's another thing. And what is the conflict there is that students were accustomed to face-to-face learning. They had all of that learning environment at school, and now they go back home where they don't have that, and that's another conflict. And that could also be socioeconomic. Again, leads to that digital divide, some of those obstacles that have to be, overcome. My last thing is, I'm going to repeat how I started. It starts, the biggest obstacles, and just put it in the form of a question, because I believe in the inquiry-based approach. What do we believe as teachers that teaching should be? What should we believe as teachers what learning should be? That's where it starts. Ask yourself what those superpowers are. And I don't want to burst anyone's bubble here today, but being a teacher is not a superpower. It's the skills and competencies that you bring to teaching and learning. There's so many different, and I have teacups. Somebody gave it to me. I love my tea, but I have to say, and Yorkshire tea, by the way. So I have to say that being a teacher is not a superpower. Teachers who are drinking out of cups where it says teaching is my superpower, you're drinking out of the wrong cup, okay? Because that's not what it is. It's what's inside the cup, okay? Now, in my case, it's Yorkshire tea, but I know my skills and competencies, and that's what's more important. So ask yourself those 2 questions, leads to metacognition, and that will help you to overcome the obstacles that you are going to face in this new normal of online teaching. And that was my rant for today.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you very much for your point of view. It's quite interesting, and I have looked at our chat, and we had a lot of comments, and people agree with our speakers. So, and I think that's quite a good sign. So, you know what? We are talking about a contemporary teacher, but what I hear from you, I hear that we are talking about a good teacher. And actually, it doesn't matter how he or she is much contemporary or not. I think that the teacher is good enough. And with my third round, I would like to ask everybody of you how to understand if a teacher is good enough. So please, Tom, would you mind if I ask you to be the first?
Wow, good question, Alex. I think we need to remember there's a truism that when a teacher walks into a classroom, every student in that classroom will have a different teacher. Every student will perceive you as the teacher in a different way. And if you're setting the bar, thinking, I'm going to be this student's favorite teacher in their lives, you're going to set yourself up for failure. Every student will perceive you differently. They'll come at you with different cultural and educational backgrounds, with different wants and needs, with different emotional influences on the day, in the course, in the institution, over their career as a whole. I think several people have brought up this idea of being a reflective teacher, making reflective practice part of your lifelong learning journey. And I think you need to see that there's always room for improvement as a teacher. You can't say, well, good enough is good for me, that you always got to have that drive, and for people it shows itself in different ways. You know, I've learned, I think, some of the best things that I do as a teacher from watching other people. I think that you cannot get beyond the value of peer observation and peer sharing and reflecting with people who are working in the same context as you, and bouncing ideas off, and collaboratively that makes you better as a group. So I think that those things are really important. I think that it is important to have people who support you developmentally, and developmental observations are really important for knowing what makes a teacher good, and for giving people advice, and actually mentoring other newer teachers makes you better as a teacher as well, being a coach to somebody else as you progress through your career, sharing that information with others. I think there's a really important thing that's happening now as well, is that where a teacher trainer previously would have their authority to be in the teacher training, the teacher educator role, because they themselves had been in a classroom for 20 years, 30 years, had the experience of working with learners. Suddenly, there are teachers who may have qualified a year ago who've got more experience of online learning and working with students in online learning environments than the teacher trainer who's got 30 years of classroom-based experience. And that means a fundamental shift in the way we look at teacher development. It has to be bottom-up, it has to be collaborative, it has to be setting our new professional standards in collaboration with people who are gaining this experience. And this is a changing context, and it is one that nobody will confidently predict the future, how much will return to face-to-face learning environments when we can. But we need to share this among each other, and to set our own standards, and to be comfortable that we let best practice emerge and learn from each other, rather than being in that isolationist bubble that Eugene very intelligently highlighted earlier on as well. So collaborative, learning from others, supporting others as you move through your career, and not setting yourself up as I'm going to be the best teacher in a competitive way to everybody else who teaches these learners as well.
Thank you, Tom. Elena, do you have something to add? And how can you understand if the teacher is good or not?
I'm just going to add something slightly different, although that does contribute to this, to the answer to the question. Speaking from the UK perspective, I mean, Tom and Ron have both mentioned interdisciplinarity, and you know, we have to admit that these days hardly anyone learns the language for the sake of learning it. They learn the language to do something with it, normally work or study. There can be other options as well, but still. So what, for example, happens at colleges and universities in the UK now, talking about the Esl Teacher Job Market, the people who have best chances of getting those jobs in pre-sessional and in-sessional courses and so on are the people who do have qualifications such as CELTA and Delta, normally Delta, of course, for that kind of level, but they also have degrees in something else. And that something else is the subject that the students have come to study in the UK. So the most popular would be business, science, law and medicine. So if you have a bachelor's or a master's as well in one of those subjects or some others, like for example, I have a PhD in film studies and I was teaching on a pre-sessional, to fashion and film, etc. students. So if you have that extra degree and you're qualified as a teacher and you're experienced enough, you have far better chances of getting ESL jobs at colleges and universities than if you're a linguist only. Funnily enough, being a linguist and nothing else but a linguist nowadays limits your job opportunities. And that's not where people should be going if they want to qualify as an English teacher. So versatility, interdisciplinarity, and openness to all sorts of knowledge, and being able to be a role model that shows that how many things you can do with a language. That is what inspires people to learn a language. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. And let me ask Evgeny if he can share his point of view on how to understand if a teacher is good enough, how it's going in Russia.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I think it's the question, the open-ended question, which we can just discuss on, and we still will understand the new shapes and the new ways how to describe the ideal teacher and how to understand the teacher is great, the teacher is good enough, and so on. I think that the main feature is that a good teacher is ready to address his or her students' needs, and I think that's just like Tom said before, that it's very important because your perception as a teacher is very different from different perspectives of your students, but being ready nevertheless to address the needs, being ready to know how to help them to navigate this bewilderingly complex world of English is very important. And also I would like to add that the shift in mind that great teachers, they invest in learning experiences, not just in the lessons. And I think that when you invest in this learning something completely different from the everyday life of our students, when you put them into the new environments, into the new situations, when you give them a challenge, just like Ron said, it makes them to rethink themselves, and that makes to really step out of their comfort zone into something interesting and beautiful. And I think that great teachers really know how to do this trick to the students, in order not to make it a kind of a punishment when you just take them out of their comfort zone and let them just swim out of themselves, but to make it an educational process, to make it a way of developing of their students. And also I would like to say that if we speak about how to understand that the teacher is good enough, I think it's a teacher who creatively with his or her students, because when you work as a main medium, when you just acting like you are the main medium in this class who knows what is the perfect English is, and now I will show you what does it mean to speak perfect English. It's not working. A teacher always tries to put in the English in perspective. He tries to add more mediums. He tries to bring more sources of English to form this completely wide point of view on English and on life as well. So I think that's just like, shortly speaking, that's it. That's we can say about.
Thank you again, and we've got Ron left to talk us a little bit about how to understand if a teacher is good. Do you have any ideas on that?
Well, I'm a very opinionated 62-year-old man, okay, and I've been teaching for many years, okay, and I have to say that when I was working for Debenhams in London, I entered, and it's sad to say, my career started in London, But now the company that trained me and made me who the man I am today is going out of business. So, it's that unbelievable story, very sad for me. But it made me aware of a lot of things. And why did I say that? Because one of my mentors at Debenhams, one of the men who I looked up to almost like my father, I started in HR. I had graduated from with my MBA, and he reminded me one day of what makes a great employee. And I was wondering, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, what's the difference between a good employee and a great employee? Now, that sounds like just a matter of semantics, but it's not. And we can move that to what makes a good teacher and a great teacher. To answer the question, a good teacher for me is somebody who does their job. They know what's expected out of them, but they don't go beyond that. They go home with the feeling, I did my job today. But did they go beyond that? And going beyond that is what makes a great teacher. Okay, someone who doesn't have to be told what to do because they know what they have to do. They don't have to be managed. They manage themselves. They are self-directed. Again, back to the employee. The employee just waits for the manager to give them on the task, then they do it. Okay, the manager's happy, but is that really creating a great employee? Not really. Okay, and I have to say that when a teacher just takes, thank you, Elena, for saying, bringing up that word. I'm always afraid to put it on the table, but linguistics, many teachers, when I do observations, take a very linguistical approach to teaching. They know all the mechanics and they can tell you about the present perfect and they can tell you all of those things. That doesn't make a great teacher. That makes a good teacher, but not a great teacher, okay? Because great teachers go beyond the mechanics. They show the students how to use the language and in situations, okay? We're not looking for language gurus who can tell you all of that because the internet and social media is full of language gurus telling you how to use grammar. My God, I'm a member of some of those sites only because I want to see what teachers are saying, okay? And how many language gurus are out there, okay? But I'm going to use Bloom's taxonomy to give you an idea of what I think is a great teacher. And the first thing is, great teachers know how to develop communities of practice. Not only for themselves, they are in a professional learning network. And they also know how to develop communities of practice with their students. And they need technology to do that, okay? So great teachers develop communities of practice, not only for themselves, but for their students. Great teachers practice lifelong learning, okay? This is a given, okay? Good teachers might not always do that. They do it only when they're told, okay? Only when they know they might lose their jobs, okay? They do it out of a fear factor. Great teachers don't enter lifelong learning and don't practice it because they're told. They know it's what they have to do to become great teachers. Great teachers, okay, fulfill what is expected out of their learners and not their employees, okay? And that is also important. Great teachers challenge learners and are not afraid to do it because they know that that is what's needed out of them. And great teachers strive to become tech savvy, okay? They try to integrate as much as possible. And what I'm saying here is you don't have to be complicated with technical things. I use very simple things, but my students are in that. They know how to use it. I teach them how to use it, okay? So great teachers are tech savvy and great teachers know their methodologies, okay? That's what makes great teachers. They know the difference between TBL, PBL, phenomena-based learning, performance-based learning. They know what deeper learning is. They know how to use frameworks like TPAC and all the things that we learn at pedagogical college, okay? Because, my God, Elena, back to you. I studied two things. English was one of them, but, I actually wanted to be a history teacher, okay? So, Sometimes I use history, and it's interesting to integrate that into the classes, okay? So teachers they know how to add perspective as well into that class. And the last thing from my Bloom's taxonomy of what really makes a great teacher and the difference between a great teacher and a good teacher, okay? Because I believe in teachers and I want to create great teachers. Teachers reflect. They reflect on what they do. Tom brought up the word best practices, but that doesn't go deep enough. We need to benchmark what we're doing. They need to know how to reflect. What are other people doing? What are other schools doing? Elena brought up that cultural thing. And I have to say that when I started coming to Russia, I just like, oh my God, it just opened up a new world for me, okay? I got so motivated in what I do now because I added that other perspective. It was a new world for me, okay? I had to start reflecting on what I do in Germany and in Europe and in Latin America because I traveled all over the world doing, teacher workshops. I'm a speaker everywhere, okay? And I have to always think about that, okay? So reflecting means not just best practices, but it also means lessons learned, okay? What best practices is always concentrating, and it's very American, on the good stuff. But let's think about what didn't work, and that's the lessons learned, and also benchmark when you do your reflection. And that's my list of what I think makes a great teacher.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you very much. So we've got about 8 minutes to go, and you know what I would like to ask you? I mean, every speaker of our discussion, I would like to think and to name maybe 2 or 3 features, characteristics of the contemporary teacher, so we can form a list of features of contemporary teacher. I would like you just to name, because we've got just 7 minutes to go. So, and just to let you think a little bit, I would like to say that everybody who's watching our discussion would be able to find the record of the discussion on the webpage of the conference, Shakespeare Conference. So, and if you are ready, please, I would like to ask, Evgeny.
Well, thank you. And if we try to summarize the main features of a teacher, of a contemporary teacher, I would like just to name quite a few of them. First of all, the contemporary teacher shows the depth and complexity of the world around us, and he or she brings different perspectives on this world. Also, when we speak about contemporary teachers, it means that the teachers need to invest in their professional and language development all the time, and to make their students lifelong learners as well. And also, I think it's very important to be connected to global and horizontal collaboration with your colleagues, with your students, and with just experts worldwide. So I would like to be short with these features.
Thank you very much. And Yelena, would you like to name 2 or 3 features of a contemporary teacher?
Well, I've picked up from this discussion, and it kind of summarizes what I've been thinking all the way. The fundamental thing is openness to everything, to the cultures, to the lifelong learning, to the technology, to everything that keeps changing this world. We're moving with the world. We have to be very, very flexible. And of course, as language teachers, we don't teach the language, we teach cultures through the language. And well, in the case of the English language, it is cultures, because there are so many, quite a few major countries where English is the first language, and they're very different countries and very different cultures. Even within the country, there are very different approaches and very different perceptions, and sometimes they can be polar to each other. So we teach the language in order to teach something else. So being open ourselves, and teaching our students to be as open and flexible as we are trying to be ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. And I would like to ask Ron. Please, Ron, name 2 or 3 features of a contemporary teacher from your point of view.
I'll mention 3 things there, okay? One of them is, we always say that we need to create a trust environment, and that's going to create engaged learners. And I believe that to be true. But we forget that that's pretty much a one-way street, okay? We want the students to trust us. But I believe that great teachers trust their students and believe in their students and believe that they can actually, trust them to make good decisions. Now, a cultural aspect of that is that sometimes, in teacher-centered cultures where the students don't know how to do that, we have to teach them slowly how to start making decisions for themselves. But then again, we have to teach teachers how to do that as well too. Okay, to move from from teacher-centered to learner-centered. Trust your students. And why am I saying that? Because everything that I know about technology today, I learned from my students. I didn't learn at a teacher's workshop. I trusted my students and they taught me. So believe in reversed mentoring. Your best teachers can sometimes be your students. So trust them. They will teach you how to become a better teacher. And the next thing is that you should go and Google the scientific studies that were done about good language learners and find out what is a good language learner and ask yourself as a teacher, because teachers want to teach. This is what we are taught to do, but you need to learn as well and learn what a good language learner is, because there is a scientific profile of that, and ask yourself, are you a good language learner? Okay, because that will help you to build on what that is. And the last thing is the one question I ask every teacher who are in my workshops at the university and workshops that I do all over the world, online or face-to-face. Would you like to be a student in your classroom? Ask yourself that question, and it's a closed question. It's yes or no, no maybes, okay? No gray areas. Be truthful with yourself, because you have to reflect. And the answer is always, I say this to them. Let me give you an example. If you're put in a position where you can choose between a good doctor and a great doctor, who would you choose? Wouldn't you choose a great doctor? I hope so, okay? And again, to answer the question, and that's the last thing I say, ask yourself that question. Would you want to be a student in your classroom?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ron. And we've got Tom remaining to answer this question, to name a couple of features of the contemporary teacher. Please, Tom.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing Ron picked up on. My reference to best practices earlier was saying that best practices still need to emerge in this world that we're moving into in terms of education and educational choices and educational technologies, and we can't assume that they're already there. I very much agree with Ron that good practice comes from experience, but experience comes from practices that haven't gone so well. So yeah. So 3 things. I would like to go back to what I said about language awareness. I think that's a critical feature, that learners need to understand what's going on with the language on a deeper level than previously established, that we're all on a professional development journey and we shouldn't be afraid to learn from others. The others being, the students that Ron has mentioned, fellow teachers, the mentors around us, becoming a mentor to others. I think those are crucial aspects of professional development.
Instructional coach, Tom. Instructional
your words,
coach.
Yeah. And then just to say that I think, remember, it's great to ask learners questions, and I love the inquiry-based method, but let's remember that we learn more about our learners from the questions they ask than the questions they answer. So let's have spaces in our classrooms for learners to ask questions.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Tom. So as I promised, we are 1 hour and 20 minutes, and so we've done. But anyway, I've got a lot of questions to ask our exciting speakers. I would like to thank everybody of you for participating, for sharing us your ideas. It was a very exciting discussion, I think. And just in conclusion, I would like to say that who should decide if a teacher is contemporary or not? Who should decide if a teacher is great, if a teacher is good or not? I think let the students decide, because every teacher works for a pupil. Thank you very much for being with us, and we are done.
Thank you.